encourage you to turn on your cameras and sway to the music. Let's get everyone into the vibe. Move your hands and get ready for this webinar tonight. Welcome everyone, I'm Regen Ray and super excited for tonight's webinar. Before I do, I just want to acknowledge that we're on traditional land owners. Someone is unmuted, let me find who that is. That's Galaxy someone. Awesome, let me do that again. Before we get tonight's show started, I want to acknowledge the traditional custodians throughout Australia that we are gathering today. Obviously, we are meeting from all parts of this beautiful country of ours and pay our respects to the original landowners, elder, past and emerging. So with that, further ado, I'm really excited with tonight's webinar, mainly because, you know, at the moment, we have to be honest, the world feels a little bit upside down. And I am, you know, wanting to be part of that narrative that puts, you know, a little bit more of a bounce in our step every day and be hopeful. And with the work that we do at Farming Secrets, we really love the ability that we get to hang out with great like-minded people. And it's so great to see some of our ongoing members in the room tonight. So I really appreciate you coming along. Before we do, I just want to paste a little chat in the chat box. I really want to open the invitation for everyone to invite all their friends and family. So there is a text that I'm going to put in the chat box now. Simply like copy it, and at any point during this presentation, if you feel the need that you think someone during this webinar, someone that you know throughout this webinar needs to hear this, copy this text. We've made it really easy. Tell them to come and join you right now on this webinar. No opt-in required. We really just want this information to go wide and far. And I feel privileged to be able to hang out with Paul tonight. So before we do, I just want to say hello to Helen and Hugo, our Farming Secrets co-creators. Let me just spotlight you. Hello, thank you very much for creating this space, and just wanted to say hello. There was a lot of people in the waiting room and I couldn't get to your name, so to let you in a bit early.
Fine. We're very excited to be here, and everyone who's on the call, we just can't wait to hear you, Paul, and thrilled that you're leading this session and giving us some ways to think and clarify things. So can't wait.
Paul, you're a great contribution to humanity.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I hope I can live up to that. I better be on my game tonight, I tell you.
Absolutely.
No, you're a natural.
Well, we'll give it a red hot go.
Awesome.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's you know, I love what I do and I love talking about it. And you know, I'm not off the land myself. You know, we had 250 acres for 30 years, but you know, I'm out of Sydney, born and bred in Sydney, and you know, then refugee to the bush to bring our kids up in the bush. Which is an almost certain way of making them, you know, city dwellers. So, you know, we now moved up to the Gold Coast, and Ray said something just before he started. He said, "Oh, you know, I miss the zen of living on the land," and I think, yeah, that nailed it for me. I miss the big, wide open spaces. That's for sure.
Yeah, very, very privileged farmers are on the call who got your own pocket there.
And aspiring farmers, those looking to it to get onto the land and helping land. There's so many people who are co-farming and helping each other, which is lovely.
Yeah, great.
A lot of my farming was, you know, this is a problem, that's a problem. This is hard work. This is whatever. It's a lot more magical in hindsight than it was when I was trying to find more hours in the day.
Yeah. It's a lot of hard work and dedication, that's for sure. But
well, we have the ideal now because one of our daughters, we have two daughters, and one's a confirmed nightclubbing city dweller and the other is a confirmed country girl. And so her and her husband breed Clydesdales. They bought their own farm, and so now I get to go visit, and I can just play with all the stuff that that I didn't have time for before. So it's finally happened, just not on my farm.
I think you did pretty well anyway, Paul.
Oh,
we went okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I'm super excited to get through your content tonight. I've seen you, work before. You've hung out with the Farming Secrets Network before during our summit. So over to you, mate. Do your magic, and I'll be here on the sidelines if you need anything.
Okay, cool. If you guys are okay with it, I would like to just, froth at the mouth for a while and see if I can't make a bit of sense amongst all of that bubble, and you can, do that, and we will back that up with a Ask Me Anything session. That's Friday, isn't it, Ray, when we're going to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. On Friday evening, we'll do an Ask Me Anything live, and we'll send details about that.
Cool. All right. So during this session, if you got questions, normally we would take questions, but we will go over time because I've got like 71 slides or something in this PowerPoint presentation. So jot your questions down and front up on Friday, and I'm all yours, and we can spend as long as you like on whatever you like. Our subject tonight, can you guys see my screen, or is that our subject, can you guys see it? Yep. So how to build unflinching faith in yourself. And the reason that that's a subject is that what I notice in my clinical work is self-doubt is at extreme proportions. So for the 37 years that I've worked in the field that I do, and basically I'm a mindset guy, and I've coached athletes and I've coached entrepreneurs, and I've pretty much coached, I think I've coached in 65 different categories of businesses or niches, and people whose businesses do billions of dollars per year, and regular people like you and me who've got kids and all the regular problems of life and all that sort of stuff. And it seems to me that the last 5 to 10 years, two things have gone off the scale exponentially. One is anxiety and the other is depression. And so when we look at what our life experience is like, then, self-doubt seems to be a big driver, and I thought we would address that tonight. So is that cool? Wave if that's cool. Rightio. So how to build unflinching faith in yourself boils down to a fairly simple question. We live in a difficult environment. We live in what I call a how-to environment. Now, what I mean by that is that my wife, Mary, about 25 years ago, she lost 30 kilos in 6 months or so. What do you reckon everybody asked her? Like, if there was one question she got asked, what do you think that question was? Someone take a guess.
How did you do
it? How did you do it?
How?
So Mary would make the mistake of explaining how she did it, because it was quite dramatic. She looked very different. And so people say, how'd you do that? She'd tell them, and they would say, that won't work. To a person, like 99% of people said, that won't work. And then they follow it with the bit that you've probably heard yourself, and that is, that won't work for me. In other words, it's different on my farm. We've got different land, we've got, different climate, that won't work for me. And so because of our fear of failure, because we've been brought up in an environment that says, if you fail at something, you're a mug, right? You're a loser, and you should conceal all your failures. Then what happens is that we want to know how to do something so that we can bag the shit out of it to make sure that we don't get involved in the wrong thing. And, Australians are hugely, hugely skeptical. The problem is the how-to is the wrong question, how to lose weight. If you looked at how to lose weight, then there's like 45,000 solutions. There's a million diets under the sun. There's a million people saying those diets won't work. In fact, there is opposition about that. So the high protein people are going to tell you that the high carbohydrate people are losers, and the high fat people are going to tell you that, you need to get fat adapted and dump sugar and and they just put 1,000 nutritionists in a room, and all you're going to get is an argument. And the more they argue, the more cemented in their position they will become. And so here's something for you to kind of just sit with. Whether you are an anti-vaxxer or a pro-vaxxer, I don't care. What I know is that if you get into someone who's into an argument with someone who's on the other side of the fence, both of you will walk away more convinced of your argument being the correct one. That's a staggering concept when you think about it. All the argument does is cement people in position. And the reason behind that, you know, like I said, we live in this how-to environment. We want to find the foolproof. We want to find the never-fail system. The reason the how-to environment is a problem for us is we're asking the wrong question. You see, we want to know what to do. But what to do is knowledge. And I haven't seen it, but I'll guarantee you that Farming Secrets has got a knowledge bank that would, you know, if you fell over it, you'd fall on your face. It's that big, right? So there's a massive amount of information. If we went into your house and we went to look at your library of how-to books, it's going to be huge. The reality is knowledge does not get results. Most knowledge actually sits on the shelf contained in a book. How many of you recognise that concept? Are any of you aware that you should eat better than you do? Just stick your hand up if you know you could eat better than you do right now, today. Okay, so by the way, get ready. I've got some more things that you might want to put your hand up about. So how many of you know you could exercise more often or better? Anybody in that category? Okay, so should you ring your mum sooner than you have been ringing her? Like, should you shorten the gap in between phone calls to your mum? How many of you know that you should do something introspective more often, whether that's yoga or meditation or prayer or hugging a tree or, you know, patting your dog? How many of you know that you should do that more often? Who's in that category? Because this is all knowledge, right? How many of you know you should have a better or a stronger or a more robust savings and investment strategy? Any of you in that category? Have you got books on it? Have any of you got books on how to trade the market or how to make money in property or, holy moly, mate, think of the trees we could have saved. How many of you know you ought to go on date night more often, like assuming lockdown, you know, lockdown's a bit of an issue for date night, but how many of you recognise you should go up to someone you love and say, I just walked into the room deliberately to tell you that I love you? Anybody in that category? And of course, here's the killer. How many of you know that you should watch less crap on the TV? Now, I can show you how to get some exercise. Who'd be interested in getting some exercise? Because I can start you gently. Anyone want to know how to get a gentle start on exercise? Okay, have you ever found yourself sitting there watching the TV late at night saying to yourself, this is crap? Or am I the only one? So your first exercise is to get your thumb and move it along the remote control and press the off button. That'll do you for the day, right? That's gentle introduction to exercise. The reality is we could all do more of that. We know that, but we don't do that. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. The real question we should ask is not how to do something. The information is there. What we need to know is, who do I have to become to be able to pull that off? Who do I have to become? What has to change inside of me to stop eating as much rubbish as I stop eating, or to stay up as late as I stay up? Who do I have to become to dump smoking? My sister-in-law, the girl who married my brother, gave up smoking after 42 years. Now, that's a magnificent thing. She posted in Facebook just a few days ago, I've been 3 years cigarette-free. It's a fantastic thing. And I said to her, mate, that's amazing that you did that, because she went cold turkey. But here's the interesting thing. I said to her, congratulations. She said, the trouble is, Paul, it ended up being easy. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I went through withdrawal just like everybody else does, but I waited 40 years longer than I needed to, because the pain of the withdrawal was exactly the same as it would have been 40 years beforehand. And she said, you're congratulating me. She said, but me and your brother have sat down and worked out that the actual cost to us is about $600,000. And I could have done it 40 years ago. She said, I just didn't find the courage. And what I want to talk to you about is change is actually about courage. Becoming better is actually about courage. It's not about what's a better way. All the research tells us that people who go on an XYZ diet lose weight around about the same speed as people who go on an ABC diet. Right? There is research now showing hundreds of thousands of people on diets around the world in clinical studies, and it turns out the actual diet, everybody loses about the same amount of weight. And it's the fact that they went on the diet, not what the diet was. This is a staggering concept when you think about it. So change, no matter how you see it, whether it's in your farming practices, whether it's in your personal life, change boils down to, can I find the courage to go through the difficult bits so that it becomes automatic? The real question we need to ask ourselves is, who do I need to become to make the changes that I already acknowledge are actually changes in my best interest? They're not changes on behalf of mankind. They're not changes because my wife or my husband said this or that or the other. They're not changes because my kids asked me to. They're changes that I know are good for me. It's a staggering concept when you think about it. So hands up if you know already, you know, that you're the biggest problem you're ever going to face in your life. Who's in that category? Okay. Ray's got both hands up, so that's what I would do too. So the two most commonly asked questions that I get asked boil down to this: how do I get myself to do the things that are good for me? That means someone comes up to me, because, you know, I've worked in this field, the mindset field, for nearly 4 decades. And people come up to me and they say, how do I get myself to do the things that I know that are good for me, that the last time I did them, I really enjoyed it and I got fantastic results and it was spectacularly great, and I stopped for some reason? And I go, hang on, you were at your place and I was at my place and you're asking me how come you stopped? The reality is you're asking me for something that you can't work out. And the truth is, it doesn't make logical sense to us that we would stop doing something that's good for us and that is working and we're enjoying the results. Of course, sometimes I get that question in reverse. How do I get myself to stop doing the things that are bad for me? And inevitably, people who come to me are pretty much, if they're going to pay full whack with us, you know, they're going to spend a fair bit of money. Generally speaking, what's happened is someone has sent them, like a doctor or someone has said to them, this is going to kill you, you're going to have to stop, you're going to have to change, you're going to have to do something different. And that's when they'll turn up and they'll say what you see there on the screen, and that is, you know, I need to change. It's actually urgent that I change. It's really, really serious, and it's going to be catastrophic, and it's going to cost me an eye-wateringly large amount of money if I don't change. But guess what? I'm struggling to change. I want to, but it's kind of like there's an evil twin inside of me. And have any of you had this kind of like, don't yell at the kids, don't yell at the kids, don't yell at the kids? It's kind of like, how many of you, have you ever felt like you're trapped in a body with an idiot? It's kind of like, my favourite thing is, you know, don't drink too much, right? Not my favourite thing. My favourite thing is have a drink, right? So I'll say to myself, alcohol-free this week. Tuesday, I'm rattling, you know. And Wednesday, I've found an excuse why next week would be a better week. Is this making sense to any of you? It's kind of like, you know, there's some kind of part of us that says, oh, crikey, I don't know what's going on. If we look at what's going on there, if we look at why that happens, then pretty much the reason we can't change is we've got a bunch of unhealed emotions inside of us from past events. Now, I don't want to go back into your past. You know, mine's been ugly enough for me to deal with, so I don't want to hear about yours. So what happens is all the unhealed stuff in my life, the stuff that I haven't been able to fix up, that creates passions and lusts and things that I can't control and cravings and urges, and so I behave badly. Does that make sense? Just kind of wave if that makes sense. Okay, so we might as well call them what they are, and that is they become bad habits that are impossible to shake. Because if a beer does settle me down, now we've got a problem. And that is, okay, so is that how we settle ourselves down for the rest of our lives? Is that it? We're just going to medicate ourselves for the rest of our lives? It turns into a major issue. Once habits get set in concrete, then what we do is we start justifying them. And you might have heard somebody say, look, yeah, I'm a smoker, but it's the only thing bad that I do. You know, I don't swear and I don't drink and I don't stay up late and da-da-da. It's just, it's just that one thing. Or, a person's got to have some joy in life. We start to rationalize these things that we do that don't make any logical sense. Have we got any smokers in the room? We got anybody who's a smoker? Okay, is that Les? Is that right? Smoker? Okay, just answer me a couple of questions, Les. I mean these questions compassionately, right? Do you know that it's expensive?
Absolutely.
Do you know that it's harming you?
Yes.
Do you know that it's going to cost you a fortune to buy yourself an early, ugly, painful death?
Unfortunately, I'm very aware.
Cool. And if logic was going to change us, Les would not be a smoker. But there's a compulsion there that forces Les to grab a smoke and stick it in his mouth. Does that, wave if that makes sense? Is right? That's good. There's no logic to this. Because if logic worked, with human beings, if logic worked, there'd be no smokers. There'd be no pubs. There'd be no drugs of any kind. Does that make sense? Like, I've just wiped out half the Australian economy. Like, we'd be in big problems. So when it looks at people changing, of course people have studied that. Of course researchers have got out there and had a look at, how do people change? And of course the most common thing that people do is set New Year's resolutions. But all the studies say that 92% of people fail to keep those resolutions. That's a staggering concept when you think about it. In fact, most of the studies will tell us that by early February it's over and done with. And that's why we don't trust ourselves. That's why we struggle. Because you see, in the normal course of life, there are going to be things turn up that test you. There are going to be things turn up that, make you question your judgment or yourself or your strength or your character. So we get problems and we get issues that turn up just because they do. Now, the people who started this stuff are now saying that your average Aussie, in fact, it's your average Westerner, your average first world person, that's you and me, is going to have 4 major life crises per year. That's like you get made redundant. That's like you get divorced. That's like you get a life-threatening illness or at least a visit to hospital. 4 of those kind of things per year. And if you go back to last year, 2020, by the time we got through January, we'd had bushfires, floods, COVID. We'd had 3 of them in the first 6 weeks. Now, do you think life or God or whatever you figure, the universe or whatever, do you think that whatever's controlling this is sitting back saying, okay, I've got to make sure that you don't get a crisis any more than once every 3 months. We'll always spread these things out during the year so that you don't get too traumatized. You reckon that's what life is doing? Or you reckon life's not interested? It doesn't care, right? So they can all turn up in a bundle all at once, completely unexpectedly. What those challenges in our life do is they offer 2 choices. And those 2 choices are pretty clear and pretty blunt. So I don't mean to be rude, but I do reckon if you're going to stay up late at night and listen to someone like me, we at least need to offer some value. So part of being valuable is being difficult, right? So if I was going to give you a bunch of easy questions tonight, I could have emailed them. So pardon me for being a little bit confronting, but let's have a look at it. If we talk about your current reality, the experience of your life as it is right now at this point in your life, this week or this month or this year, we call that your current reality. If we ask ourselves what's going to happen, then you're either going to thrive or dive under the circumstances. So COVID has turned out to be a killer for a number of not just people's lives, but businesses as well. And so that's just one of the challenges that we face. So when we don't handle a challenge well, when my sister-in-law says I spent 40 years trying to stop smoking, what she's saying is I was not succeeding. But what we do is we rationalise it. Hands up if it makes sense when I'm saying we rationalise it. We explain it. Okay, so what happens is that causes the quality of our life to diminish. And the reason it causes the quality of our life to diminish is we get followed around by someone who's constantly telling us how much we're messing it up. How many of you are aware that you talk to yourself all day? This is normal, okay? Just one, but the one conversation is normal, right? If you've got 2 or 3 voices up there, I can't help you. But most of us spend most of the day criticizing ourselves. And that unravels us. Does that make sense? Okay, if we were going to go on a search for the person who's hurt you the most, we wouldn't have to go far, would we? Because who's been the most abusive, the most vindictive, the nastiest, the most consistent? It's you. And so what happens is we drive our life down. If we can reverse that, then what we can do is we can live a magnificent life. But to do that, we have to find the courage and the strength to deal with our difficulties as they are for long enough to get through them and have a win. And you're actually good at this. Hands up if you can drive a car. Okay, you'll notice I didn't say, do you have a license, right? Because that doesn't mean you can drive a car. So if you think about how you learnt to drive, it was actually a series of failures. It was actually, get in there and mess up the gear change and slide from one lane to the other, forget the blinker, all of that sort of stuff. But over a period of time, if you're prepared to put up with the difficulty of learning to drive, you end up driving around. Make sense? So it's a question of where we put our energy, whether we put our energy into getting through the tough bit or into explaining why we can't get through the tough bit. So there are 2 options when it comes to the tough bits in our life. Now the tough bits, we can talk about how difficult it is being on the land, and there are some additional challenges that people get on the land that they don't get in the cities. But when we look at what we do with those additional difficulties, there's only these 2 options, and the first is what I've just taken what was on the previous slide and put it into red and green, because I want to talk to you about your life being red, orange, or green. The life that you deliver to you, is it red, orange, or green? And what I mean by a green life is it's spectacularly great. An orange life is kind of like it's okay. There's good bits and bad bits. And a red life is it's kind of like losing its quality. The returns on your effort are diminishing. So our 2 options when we run into a brick wall are to find the courage and the strength and the tenacity to work our way through that, or explain that it's someone else's fault. It's the government, or it's, whatever it is. If you look at what you go through when you enter into these options, then on the green line, what happens is that is initially difficult. It's, if we talk about my sister-in-law stopping smoking, then it offers all of the problems of withdrawal. The cramps in the stomach and the can't breathe and all of those sort of things. But if you can get through that initial difficult part, then what happens is you get all of the satisfaction and fulfillment that comes from skyrocketing self-esteem, because you overcome a difficulty that took some doing. Now, your next door neighbour might have done it easy, but if it took some doing for you, then it enhances your self-esteem. It encourages you to tackle more. It kind of lets you know that you're capable of a bit more than what you thought you were. And so the reality is, if you decide that, you've got a fear of speaking in public and therefore that's why you should speak in public, well, the pain of that is intense. Most people, hands up if you wouldn't speak in public for love nor money. Is anybody in that category? Okay, so if we say how scary is that, how much pain, most people that I talk to where they've got a promotion, they have to do it, say on a scale from 0 to 10, the pain level is 13. And I go, okay, I understand. But it's not going to be 13 out of 10 for very long. But if you manage to skip it, and if you manage to wiggle your way out of it and never give the speech, and get through 30 years of never giving the speech and somehow reject every opportunity and all of that sort of stuff, then what you have is you have 2 out of 10 pain for 30 years. And my friends, one of those kinds of pain is eternal, and the other is very short-lived. Because when you know that you duck the opportunity to give the speech, that does not fill you with self-admiration. You recognise you took the easy way. So it doesn't help self-esteem-wise. If we look at what happens with option 2, it's the opposite. When we get into explaining why it's all too difficult and it's someone else's fault and all the rest of it, initially that's pretty easy because now I don't have to learn how to give the speech. Now I don't have to go through the withdrawal from the cigarettes or the alcohol or the whatever. But the trouble is that temporary gratification that I get from not having to do something or doing something more pleasant, that gets exchanged for plummeting self-esteem because I know that I could have stepped up and I didn't. And what it means is I'm going to experience failure on a very large scale over a long period of time. As my sister-in-law said, this has cost me $600,000. And so that luxury and that comfort of taking the easier way out is very short-lived. But what is accompanied by is permanent disillusion with self. And that's why when you come across older people who are bitter and twisted, they say it's the government, or they say it's people in general, or they say it's whatever, they'll blame whatever. But really they're bitter and twisted about them not stepping up and them not playing a bigger game. There's a trumpet going off. I don't know how you do that, Ray, but that's a neat trick. So when we look at option 1 and option 2, basically the research tells us that 8% of people go for option 1 habitually. And 92% of people go for option 2 habitually. Therefore, you could dramatically change your life with one shift of mindset. All you have to understand is a couple of fairly simple things. The first thing to understand is that 46% of any actions that you take on any day are automatic. And what I mean by that is if you jump in the car and drive somewhere, hands up if you've arrived at the destination, you've got no idea how you did it. That's what we mean by an automatic thing. An automatic thing is how you make a cup of tea. You know, you might say to yourself, I feel like a cup of coffee, and all of a sudden you're in the kitchen. But you didn't have to talk to your legs about how to get there. And you certainly don't have to instruct yourself about how to make a cup of coffee, right? So it happens automatically. So nearly half of what we do in any one particular day, we don't even know we did it. This is a staggering concept when you look at the whole idea that you've done something, but you don't even know that you did it. Now, where's Les? Can you just unmute again, Les? Where are you? Okay, is it true, Les?
Yep.
Is it true that every now and then you end up, there's a cigarette in your mouth, but you didn't put it there? You didn't tell yourself?
Definitely, it just happens.
Yeah, it's kind of like magic. They levitate, don't they?
Yeah.
Staggering. Have we got any nail-biters in the room? Anybody here is a nail-biter? Just hands up. Is that, who is that? I can't read your name, I'm sorry.
I think it was Keith.
The guy and the lady in the picture. Yeah. Wave. Say who you are.
It's Keith.
Hey, yeah, you mean
Keith?
Keith?
Yeah, nail-biter. Can I have a look, Keith?
Here, look at your nails.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're serious. Okay. You've been practicing, haven't you?
I got 80 years of practice.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, do you want an answer?
No, because the question will be obvious. But anyway, you can answer it if you like. Do you just kind of like look around and there your hands are in your mouth, or do you say to yourself about 25 times a day, oh shit, I'm behind schedule. If I'm going to see blood by Friday, I'm going to have to get into it, and I better start biting my nails. Like, have you got a plan, or does it just happen? Take your time with this answer, mate. So, nearly half of the things that we do, we don't even know we've done them. Is it possible that someone who's a nail biter can be biting their nails, but they don't know that they're biting their nails? Okay, that's what we've got to get on top of. So let's get our two options, the green option and the red option. This is exactly what you've seen on the screen before. I've just split them aside. You understand you're looking at the same stuff? Yep, cool. Okay, so the reality is that what we do is we pick option number 2 so often that we actually start to lose faith in our own ability to do what we said we would do. I'm going to go alcohol free for the year. What that really means is I'm going to try. Does that make sense? I'm going to give up smoking. I said to my sister-in-law, how many times do you reckon you gave up smoking? She said, at least 100. And so when she attempted it the last time, her husband, who's my brother, says, well, I'll back you again, honey, but you know, you don't exactly have a good track record here. And that track record's being held against her by her and, of course, him as well. So what happens with option 2 is option 2 promises us relief from an ugly feeling. Hands up if that makes sense. It offers relief from an ugly feeling. I don't know how to discipline the kids. You know, I could send them to their room, I could ground them, I could yell at them, I could scream out. I don't know what to do with the kids, so bugger it, I'll have a beer and think about it. And now the ugly feeling's gone away. And that's what I mean by the ugly feeling goes away. So we go into judgment of ourselves because we fall off the wagon. You know, I love this expression. How many of you understand what I mean by falling off the wagon? Is that a familiar? Yeah. What falling off the wagon means is, oh, I didn't do it. It happened to me. It was a rough ride and I fell off. It's kind of like someone pushed you. Which, like, that is 100% horseshit, but it's a beautiful excuse, isn't it? Oh, I fell off the wagon. The reality is we jumped. We choose. We make a deliberate choice to avoid speaking in public. We make a deliberate choice to do this or to do that or to not do that or whatever. But once we do it, then we get up ourselves about how weak and hopeless and gutless we are. And the end result of that is every time you break a promise to yourself, you lose faith in yourself. And you'd be better off if you didn't make those promises. You'd actually be in a better position if you didn't make the promises. And I'm going to suggest to you as a method of making your life a better experience, don't make a promise unless you already know you're going to nail it. Keep it small enough. And we work with recovering drug addicts and, you know, we don't get them to say, I'll never shoot up again. It's too big. We get them to say, can you promise to not shoot up in the next hour? We keep the promise small because then there's a chance of keeping it. If we keep that promise small enough, the chance of keeping it is that it is exponential. And that's one little tick in the right box, in the self-esteem box. So there's an indisputable life lesson we can draw from this. There's kind of no way around this. Your happiness, your personal happiness, your experience in life, your happiness is going to be measured by the number of times you let option 2 overcome option 1. It's as simple as that. Every time you go red line, you undo a little bit of the good that you've done in your life. Every time you go green line, you put another deposit in the self-esteem bank. And achievement and change is all about self-esteem. You recall that I started about half an hour ago saying change is actually about courage. Remember, who do I need to become is more important than how do you do it. And who do I need to become is a person of courage, a person of tenacity, a person willing to take a risk, a person willing to fail, even in public, and decide that everybody else who might judge them for failing is entitled to make their judgment, but who needs to listen to that? So 90% of the population choose the option that makes it easy for them to go with the current feeling. And 10% of the population go, you know what? If I could get a few wins in the right area, I could overcome everything. So we talk about keystone habits. And keystone habits are habits that affect everything that you do. And there's only half a dozen of them. And if you know what the keystone habits are and you can get them implemented, then your life goes through the roof. Most people fiddle around the edges thinking, oh, you know, I drink too much or I eat too much or I smoke too much or I don't exercise enough. None of those are keystone habits. Keystone habits are fundamental. So we'll talk about those in a second. Really, the rest of what I want to talk to you about now is how to make choosing option 1 easier than option 2, because you're never really going to go for option 1 until it becomes the easy one. Hands up if that makes sense. We've actually got to find a way to make the hard thing easy, and then we can go for it. Now, to understand that, then I want to talk to you a little bit about how your brain works, and it's good that you're off the land, because, hands up if you can see a tree. City dwellers, I would have to describe to them what they're seeing, right? But you guys should probably recognise a tree. Fair enough? Okay, cool. But it was a trick question. Now you can see a tree. And so your conscious brain and your subconscious brain are like the tree. The thoughts that you hear in your head, how many of you where you talk to yourself all day? Remember I said that's normal? Okay, so that's a part of the tree above the ground, and you hear those thoughts in your head. Under the ground is your subconscious belief system. All the programming that makes you do things automatic is under the ground or in your subconscious. And so what that means is that your subconscious does not speak English. It just gets you to do stuff. So your subconscious talks to you in terms of urges and feelings and sensations. It doesn't speak in English. And so essentially you can say to yourself, look, I'm a good person. I've never really hurt anybody. I'm not one of those bad dudes. I don't rob banks and I haven't got tattoos on my face. And guess what? Last week when I was doing this workshop, I had to apologise to someone who had tattoos on their face. So if you've got tattoos on your face, good on you. Not my choice, but, you know, good on you. Anyway, I don't mean anything offensive by that, but there you go. So we think to ourselves about I'm doing this or I'm going here or I'm doing that or whatever it is and blah, 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 blah. But if what we've got buried in our subconscious is you don't deserve to have what you want, that you're not good enough, then essentially we've got a wheelbarrow against a bulldozer. Because your conscious brain activities use about 10% of your capacity and your subconscious will use 50 or 60% of your capacity. The thing is, if you've got a subconscious belief that says you don't deserve to have what you want, it won't even tell you that it's there. You'll just find a way to mess things up. So hands up if the word self-sabotage mean anything to you. Okay, so self-sabotage is a consequence of negative subconscious beliefs. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it, whatever that might be. The interesting thing about this is that your thoughts are light and airy, but your subconscious programming is heavy. And so most people, we never get taught at school how to deal with that. So before we go too far with how to change, I want to point out that you actually know already. And so there's no doubt that countless times in your life, you've actually pulled it off. And what I mean by that is that you've slammed head first into a brick wall. How many of you had a wake-up call you weren't expecting? You know, like you got sacked or dumped or whatever. That's what I mean by you slammed into a brick wall. You probably at some point acknowledged that you needed to make some changes in your life, and then you summoned up the courage to do that and take some action about it, and then you pushed through even though it was hard, and you force yourself to be better for long enough for being better to actually be normal. Now, hands up if you know that you've actually done that on numerous occasions. Yeah, so we do know how to change. It's funny that this, you know, when I put this up in seminars and say, here's a formula for change, most people go, wow, that's amazing. No, it isn't. You've been doing it all your life. There's just some places where you don't. So it's that new you that most people are interested in becoming. You know, we desperately want that new us to finally have a win, because ultimately we know some things that are unavoidable. You know, if you've got 10 extra kilos on at the moment, you know that you do, right? No, you don't need someone to tell you that you need to lose weight. You know yourself. Does that make sense? Okay, so we know that there are things that we need to change about ourselves, about whether it's we eat. You know, it's obvious that we've got to save some money, get an investment strategy going, or maybe that you've done that bit, but you just haven't got organised and your desk looks like a bomb hit it, or you're so busy doing everything, there's no time left for you to have me time and to do what you'd actually choose to do if you had an hour or a day or a week to yourself. And so we wonder why we can't get the essentials right. And interesting enough, I've been working on this for 4 decades, and here's what I've discovered in that time, and it boils down to this. Traditional methods of habit change behaviour absolutely don't work. Now, I don't know if Les is still with us. I'm not sure I can see on my screen, but nail biters will tell you that what you should do is you should get that stuff that tastes like poison and paint it on your nails, and that'll stop you biting your nails. But they just get used to the taste of it. Smokers will tell you that, you can get an injection that makes you throw up every time you have a cigarette, but, they just go ahead and do that. Same with alcohol. So we know that the traditional methods don't work. Otherwise, we'd all be doing the things that we want to do. We also know that discipline is a kiss of death, because if you go on a diet, it's only a matter of time before we have what's called a breakout. And a breakout comes because we're sick of what we feel like is denial. Because everybody else is allowed to have the chips and the potatoes and all the rest of it, and there we are eating lettuce. And so the discipline is never going to work in terms of getting us to change. We also know that every time we try to change and we don't, that creates massive damage to our self-esteem. So we say to people, do not try to change until you've figured out that you're going to succeed before you start. Because if you try to change and fail, you're worse off than if you didn't try. We also know that 90% of attempts at change fit into that category. 90% of people who attempt a change of some kind or other fail in that attempt. And we've discovered why. And it may surprise you, it may not, but in looking at why so many people fail so often, it kind of boils down to a simple thing. And therefore, with this simple thing, it will turn out to be easy to fix. So we've discovered how to fix it. And interesting enough, this will make so much sense to you that you're going to start laughing, right? So just kind of take a deep breath. I don't know if you actually laugh, but have a look at this. You're like an iceberg. Now, how many of you know that 10% of the iceberg's above the water and the rest of it's underneath? Okay, so that's why we use that analogy. It's right. It's a little bit like what I said about the brain and the heart, So what happens with the iceberg analogy is, 10% of the iceberg is above the water. And so if the wind is blowing left to right, you would expect the iceberg to move left to right, but it doesn't. It goes with the current. And so if the current's actually going right to left, then what happens is the iceberg moves against the wind. And that is so often like us. Don't yell at the kids, don't yell at the kids, don't yell at the kids. So often what we do is, hang on, what am I doing here? I was talking to myself about being over there, and here I am over there. Wondering how we do that. So when people come to us seeking help, generally speaking, they know what they want. Generally speaking, they're saying, okay, I want you to help me stop smoking or stop drinking too much or stop eating rubbish or whatever it is, or I want you to help me start, going to the gym or get fitter or whatever else, or I want more money or I want more time or I want more effort or I want more peace, I want some more inner peace or whatever it is. Generally speaking, if I said to you I could grant you 3 wishes, how many of you could pretty quickly make the 3 wishes? Okay, so we know what we want. That's not hard. That's not a difficult question. Typically, one of those things might be, I want to lose 10 or 15 kilos. It's gradually crept on over the years. I don't know how it got there, and about every attempt to get rid of it hasn't worked. So instead of going on diets and whatever, I'll come to see you. I go, okay, good. We get them to have a look at it. What I'm going to suggest to you is what we want is actually a bit shallow. What you could say now, when I say, well, if you had 3 wishes, could you make those wishes right now? Obviously, that's a bit superficial because I didn't give you any time to think about it. And so it tends to be a bit shallow. But that person who comes along to us and they lose that 10 kilos, it actually doesn't matter if it's 5 kilos or 15 or 25, but when they do that, what happens is that they go deep and they say, you know what, I thought I wanted to lose the weight, but in actual fact, I like who I've become. Because you know what, I sleep better, I've got more energy, I wake up better, I'm just more positive to be around, I'm a more enjoyable person to be around, I've got heaps of energy, I'm more positive, I look at things, I can solve problems, and by the way, I lost the weight. So when they turn up, losing the weight's on the top of the list. It's the reason why they'll spend the money and the time. By the time they've achieved it, losing the weight's gone to the bottom of the list because they've got all these other things about respecting themselves and taking care of themselves that they didn't know. You know, just the fact that they can control themselves, just the fact that they can sit there and watch everybody else eat the ice cream and not feel the urge to go for it, fills them with deep satisfaction because they realise, hey, I've got a choice here instead of being the victim of my wants and my needs and my whatever. And so really the big deal for us is, you know, what we actually get is an improved version of us. And by the way, you might be a bit lighter or you might drink less or you might eat less or whatever, but that's going to be a minor detail. And funnily enough, what we discover is that if we keep looking deep, because, you know, for us, habit change is kind of pretty simple. What we're interested in is who people become because they change their habits. And we believe that you deserve to be your own unstoppable hero. We reckon you should be able to find guidance within. Every human being deserves a right to be able to tune into their own wisdom. Because when we can tune into our own wisdom, then we can run our show. And we can run it exactly the way that we want. And all of those things that happen around us, you know, those 4 catastrophic events per year, suddenly start to bounce off instead of impacting on us. So it makes for a pretty profound concept. Our deep-seated belief, and really the philosophy behind everything that we do, is we believe everybody deserves to be able to turn within and find that wisdom. Everybody should be able to turn within and find a friend. Not someone who's going to criticise them and tell them they're a loser, but someone who's got wisdom and resilience and someone who's going to care for them and guide them in the way that a good parent would do. If you understand that concept, then you'll see that habit change is kind of like a bit superficial. It's important. It's like having a car, you know, you need one. It's not the meaning of life, but you need one. And so habit change is a little bit like that. We kind of get stuck up in the kind of like the surface issues of it. Now, if I go back to my traditional diagram and I say to you, know, most people live a red, an orange or a green life. The reality is only 10% of them get onto the green life. The vast majority of human beings, particularly in first world, are on the orange line. There's probably a significant number of people on the red line, but you know, the reality is most people's lives are up and down and pretty much the same next year as they were this year. And the reality is what we've got to do is we want to get on the green line. What we've got to do is you've got to do what we call make the jump. Now that boils down to what my sister-in-law said 3 years ago when she said after 42 years of smoking, I'm making the jump. But how many of you can recognise that's a big bloody jump after 42 years? That's a pretty that's a big leap. That makes sense? And that will tell you the most important thing on this diagram. The longer you wait, do I need to finish that sentence? The longer you wait, the bigger that bloody jump is, mate. Therefore, we need to understand that the things that are important for us to get on with, the more time we spend researching on how, the more damage we're doing to ourselves. Because how hasn't been proven yet. So what we know is that the longer you wait, then the harder the jump becomes. The riskier it is to make that jump, it's more costly, it's actually slower to get across, there's more distance to cover. And so what we can say to every human being we meet, you could say this to someone you meet tomorrow, hey, right now, you're as close to that green line as you're ever going to get. Because tomorrow you'll be further away from that green line. Hands up if that makes sense. Okay, so this means that the changes that you know that are in your best interest, they're not just in your best interest, they're urgent. They're urgent. And as I said before, people never fall off the green line. What they do is they behave off the green line. They just go, oh, I've had enough of this diet, I'm sick of this, bugger it, there's a packet of chips and they're in. But the interesting thing about that is if you can acknowledge that you behave off the line, then you'll know that you can behave back on. Therefore, after 36 years in the game, we are extremely skeptical of courses, trends, books, programs, knowledge transfers, further learning, focus groups, fads. I'm just up to here with the latest thing. Now, call me old and cranky, But the reality is, having been a teacher of mindset for 1,000 years, most people's attempt at change at mindset is doomed to failure. What we do know is there is a method called behavioural change. In other words, what we have to look at is a concept called not habit change, but behaviour change. If I can change how I behave, then it can become habitual. It's a life-changing switch. And our job as professionals in the field is to get you on the green line and keep you there. That's what we do as an organisation. But behavioural change, what is it? Well, if you want it described, then I'll give it to you in a nutshell. It comes down to what we call head, heart, and hand. What we mean by head is what you think matters. What we mean by heart is your emotional state counts. And what we mean by hand is what you actually go out there and do is the big thing that makes a difference. So when what I need to think is combined with what I need to feel and what I need to do, results are automatic. Now, how is that different to traditional methods of habit change? Basically, we're saying behavioural change doesn't rely on new knowledge. In fact, you don't need any more new knowledge. How many of you kind of like got more knowledge than you've been able to use already? Who's in that category? We don't need more knowledge, right? We need to know how to implement the knowledge that we've got. So why does behavioural change work? It works because it's simple and it's practical and it's straightforward. It's easy to implement and there's no jargon in it. And so when we say, is behavioural change better than habit change? Well, no, it's not better unless you think faster is handy, or unless you like being effective, or if you'd like it to last longer, or if you'd like it to be less painful, or if you'd like it to be less complicated. Of course it's better because it works. Not the simplest thing in the world, but it's simple to follow through. So behaviour change, let me put it to you from this point of view. If there was a system that guaranteed lasting transformation, and if that mechanism took you less than 20 minutes a day, and if it cost you next to zero, and it put you in the 8%, would you owe it to yourself to give it a go? Okay. You do owe it to yourself to give it a go. Staggering concept. Let's have a look at standard habit change. Before we go to it, I don't know if you can see that small that small text up in the top left-hand corner. You know the organisation called Weight Watchers? They're involved in habit change and they survive. That's a multi-billion-dollar a year business, survives on a success rate of 1.6%. So practically anything's got to be better than that. So the way we tackle it, if we look at what people normally do, right, is the average person gets sick of being the way they are. They go, bugger it, I'm going to do something. I'm going to go on some diet, or I'm going to go cold turkey with the alcohol, or I'm going to go hard, I'm going to give up the smokes. I'm going to do whatever and get involved in some discipline which is characterised by massive doses of denial. You can't have this and you're not allowed to do that. That makes sense? And then some trigger in life comes along, the trigger we had this week, just this week, was our second grandchild was born, but when he was born, there was no heartbeat and he wasn't breathing. So you can get triggered, right? As an ex-smoker, I haven't smoked for 35 years, but I'll tell you what, I had the desire to smoke. Hands up if that makes sense. And drink, and chips, and everything. And get on a plane and do something illegal and fly to another state in Australia when you're not allowed to, just to be there so that I could stand around being useless. Because those feelings are just so powerful. So what happens is that we have a craving that comes because we got triggered. Now, whether we get triggered because someone was rude to you at work, or because The people who's supposed to deliver the stuff you need to do your fencing today delivered all the wrong stuff, and you can't have the right stuff until next week, and you just employed a bunch of people to do that. Whatever it is, doesn't matter what the trigger is, but the trigger happens, and with this craving to, how many of you had the craving to strangle someone, and that was because you had a gun, but you'd rather inflict more pain? Have any of you had that? Yeah. I want to kill them, but I want to kill them slowly. So what happens is we get involved in this thing where I need to have some discipline. The trouble about discipline is it involves choice. And so I go without whatever it is for a while, but then I fall off the wagon because the denial is just too much for me to handle. The reaction to falling off the wagon is I call myself some kind of an idiot and a loser because I didn't manage to stick with it yet again. And so what that does, it gives me the reward of falling off the wagon, which is I'd start into the self-loathing and I hate myself because I fell off the wagon again. And I talk about what kind of a loser does this because the dam broke and it overflowed and I couldn't help it. And so I have this breakout, and the end result of the breakout is that there I am back again, over-consuming too much, eating too much, staying up late at night, doing whatever it is that gets me in a bad position, so I'm easily triggered again tomorrow. Because if I'm in the habit of going to bed late, that means I don't sleep well, which means I'm ready to be fired off again tomorrow. Does that make sense to any of you? So we call this the cycle of impotence. It's kind of like the world's bigger than me, right? The stuff that's going on is more than I can cope with. It's more than I can handle. And it's compulsions driven. Not just driven by I need a beer. Like I've got to have a beer. It's kind of like I just find it all I need is an excuse. The beer's in the fridge already. It's cold already. I told myself none for this month. And it's only the 16th, but holy moly, like just find an excuse and we'll be right. And when I grab the beer and drink it, it's great for the first half of it. And after that, I start going, you loser, what did you do that for? Oh, you had 16 days up and la, 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 la. And away I go into the whole self-recrimination thing. Hands up if that makes sense. Have any of you been on that? We call it a vicious cycle. And it's vicious, it's nasty, and it's cyclical, and we try hard to get off it. But what I've got to tell you right here, right now, is the more energy you put into that, the harder you try, the worse it'll get. Because that's an energetic cycle, right? You're feeding energy into that. Now, if you're spinning around in a circle and someone says, try harder, that means add more energy. That means you're spinning faster. That makes sense? It means falling off the wagon comes around more often. So we struggle with that. We can call that red line existence, right? So that's the vast majority of human beings are in that kind of a category. That's what they do. That's what happens to them. So that's red line stuff. If we go into shifting, then we've got to go into what we call a battleground. This is what I said to you just a minute ago is the jump. When you go to make the jump from the red line to the green line, when you go to make that jump, you're going to go into the battleground. What we call the battleground is where you're uncertain. It's where things are really difficult because you're not too sure how to do it all and what to do, etc. And so we say make the jump, but to make the jump, what you need is a framework. You need a system. And without a system, it's just going to be cactus. Interesting enough, the system is ridiculously simple because it boils down to being mindful. It boils down to turning up in the present moment. We teach this stuff to 7-year-olds and they get it in the first lesson. Adults struggle with it because we're saying, be still. And adults are not good with that. Have you noticed if you're ever in a queue at the bank or Macca's or the post office or whatever, how far back in the queue have you got to be before you pull your phone out because you can't stand standing there? Ridiculous concept, right? So mindfulness is about turning up and being present, being still and tuning into yourself and finding out what's going on. Because if we can find out what's going on, we can fix it. But most of us don't want to know. We want what's going on to go away. And so what it does, it gives us a choice. And the choice is to let that feeling exist within us or not. And as we allow that feeling to exist within us, and that does take a little bit of discipline to turn towards a feeling instead of away from it, what it does is it allows us to immerse ourselves in it. And it might be hurt, it might be anger, it might be sadness, it could be fear. But they won't make us drown because as we immerse ourselves in them, they lose their grip on us and we experience relief. And from that pink bit where it says framework, around to relief is less than 10 minutes. For somebody going through major agony, it's less than 10 minutes to get around to the relief point. When we get to relief, it's all easy, because then the reward is that we had a breakthrough and we feel powerful because we controlled the situation instead of the situation controlling us. So we call this a circle of empowerment. It's an upward spiral. The frightening thing about these two circles is that they both use about the same amount of energy. And so no matter where you are, the same amount of energy in either circle gets you a totally different result. It's just a question of knowing how to get across onto that green line. When we boil it all down to it, basically your habits are compulsive, otherwise we wouldn't call them habits. If we understand that, we can look at what people do and what they say. Very few people think that they're headed towards the fridge for reasons other than hunger. But hands up if you've eaten something while you were telling yourself to not eat it. Yeah. Don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. This is a staggering concept when you think about it. We're telling ourselves not to eat it and it's being shoved down our throat. And you know what we do? Is we eat it quickly so that we can get away with it. It's a staggering concept when you think about it. So very few people think that they're eating for reasons other than hunger. But in reality, we'll eat because we're lonely, we'll eat because we're sad, we'll eat because we're alone, we'll eat because we're hurt, whatever. Even less people are ready to endure a diet. They think that diet, the reason diets don't work is because, you know, there's no taste and there's not enough food anyway, and it's all, you know, it's boring as batshit, the food. But if they looked at what they're eating now, it's just jam-packed full of salt and sugar and all these things that cause these flavour explosions in our mouth. And, you know, we're hooked on the overwhelming sensation of the food. Is this making sense? Like my favourite thing with my beer is salt and vinegar chips. Anybody in that category, you understand the relationship between beer and salt and vinegar chips is a profound one, yeah. But if you eat the salt and vinegar chips long enough, your mouth burns. Well, it's got to tell you something. It's got to tell you that stuff should not be going in your mouth, right? If you are going to put it in your mouth, it should be pretty rare. Very small numbers of people subscribe to the idea that a savings and investment account would be fun. They think saving is like dieting, you know, it looks and feels like just massive amounts of denial every day. And basically nobody thinks that their resistance to getting their desk organised is for reasons other than it's a pain in the arse. Whilst they acknowledge that the current shit fight on their desk is costing them time and money. So really these things here, what I'm saying is they're all examples of trying to overcome an emotion with logic. We just can't do it. Because logic is using 10% and emotion is using 50 or 60%, and emotion will always win that battle. So what we absolutely know to be true is that every habit, every compulsion or every addiction causes this ugly feeling to be replaced temporarily by a more pleasant one. That's really what I've been saying. But we could boil it down to one sentence which says, you know what? What we're actually doing when we do that is we're mood altering by using substances and activities. Does that make sense? We deliberately change how we feel. And we do that by a substance or an activity. That's why gym junkies are gym junkies, right? They feel better when they go to the gym. That's why workaholics work, is because they feel better when they work. Working for horrendous hours every day stops them feeling like crap. That's all it is. It's mood altering via substance or activity. Unfortunately, we get into self-loathing because we know that we're engaging in a habit that's bad for us. So you don't need me to tell you that those habits or those compulsions are ruining your life. In fact, we end up like the puppet. And if you're not actively choosing how you feel on a moment-by-moment basis, if you're actually saying, you made me angry, that thing upset me, I got hurt by what you said, that made me sad, I'm afraid of this or that or the other, you're not choosing how you feel. That's automatic. And if you're not choosing how you feel, you're the puppet. And the problem is, the puppeteer is your buried emotions, and most people don't even know what they are, let alone bring them up for healing. Therefore, if you know anything about personal change, you'll know that it's a jump that defeats 92% of people, which is where we started. And because of that jump, because of the existence of that jump, that's why I created our 21-day habit change challenge. We've only run it twice this year. Both times spectacularly successful, unbelievably successful. What we did was I've broken my behaviour change framework into 21 mini assignments. How many of you heard it takes 21 days to change a habit? Yeah, I think that's bullshit, right? I think it takes a lot longer than that. But in 21 days, you can find out how to do it. In other words, in 21 days, you can learn. So if you wanted to join us on this 21-day habit change challenge, then we'll be getting together for half an hour in the morning for 21 days in succession. And I'll give you an assignment. I'll spend about 15 minutes describing a concept, and then I'll give you an assignment. Around about half the people who do this challenge do the assignment while I'm describing it. Pardon me. Grab some water. So spend half an hour on the video, and if you can't make it, if you can't make it 7:30 in the morning, then that's okay. You can watch the recording later in the day and just do the assignment when you get it. Your task is to get that assignment done before the next day, because we're getting the next assignment. But I keep the assignment small enough so you can get it done quickly. Meanwhile, you can ask me whatever you want, because there's unlimited questions and answers via some system we've got where you can type in what you're asking about and I can answer that. So your job is to identify one change that you know will affect everything else in your life. And my job is to guide you and to coach you to success with that. Because together we can make the 21 days a turning point. How would you figure out if this would be of value to you? Well, if you were looking at it financially, you'd say, does it deliver more than it cost me to be in it? If you're looking at it self-esteem wise, you'd say, well, will I feel better about myself at the end? If you're looking at it from the self-trust angle, you'd say, well, what would it mean to be able to keep promises to myself? And if you're looking at how you feel, you'd be saying, well, do I want to feel stronger, more capable, more powerful, more resourceful? And I guess that's my question for you, is what would it be worth to nail one key concept that you know would automatically affect everything else in your life? Because that's what the 21-day habit change challenge offers. So Julie Carter, I'm going to get you to unmute yourself. I did see you in the corner there, mate, so your turn. You did the 21-day habit change challenge with us earlier in the year. Mm-hmm. So can you give us 10 words on whether it's any good or not?
Yes, it was very good. Is that 10 words? Very worthwhile doing, yes.
Very worthwhile.
Mm-hmm.
One big change that happened for you?
I started journaling. That was my 21-day habit forming thing that I did, and through my journaling I discovered all sorts of things about myself, and that was very worthwhile. Another one was to get out of bed early, and get out of bed early at 6:30 and do my self-care, which was very much neglected in my life before I started this work with Paul.
Cool. So would you recommend it? That's all I'm saying.
I definitely would recommend it, yes. Very worthwhile.
Cool. All right, well, I'm going to invite you to join us. It's $97, which is a ridiculously small amount of money for 21 days focused effort. What we can tell you is the reason this works is that most people have never spent 21 days consecutively working on themselves, even just for half an hour. So it works spectacularly well. If you want to join us, then you sign up by going to that bit.ly link there. So you just type into your browser bit.ly/FS-habit, or there's a link in the chat box and you can click on that to join us. If you do decide to join us, then my way of facilitating you moving forward with that is I'm going to ethically bribe you to join us, because the more the merrier. And so if you join us today, then I'm going to throw in a personalized meditation. That's where I make a meditation for you. You just got to tell me what you want in it, and I'll put it together. My voice, music in the background, download it to your phone, play it 1,000 times a day if that's what you want to do, or once, or whatever. I will also give you my Conquering Procrastination workbook. This is a fairly big volume, and it'll take some working through, because procrastination is one of those things that it takes a bit to get around. How many of you are like world champion level procrastinators? Who's in that category? Okay, so you will love this thing from the point of view of it'll show you how to get through procrastination, turn it into motivation. And I'm going to give you a recording of a workshop I did about overcoming self-doubt, because what happens for most people with self-doubt is it causes them to stop, because we make the mistake of thinking that I have to have confidence to be able to go forward, that I shouldn't try and do something until I'm confident. And I believe in how many of you heard, you need to believe in yourself? Who's heard that? Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe you should believe in yourself. How are you supposed to believe in yourself when you've never done it? Like, how are you supposed to believe I can go up in front of a crowd and speak in public and I've never done it before? But what you could do, and it's explained in that recording, is believe in the possibility. And if you can believe in the possibility, then you can learn the how, and that'll enable you to do that. And of course, where most people run into trouble is they have the knowledge, but not the implementation. How many of you got a heap of knowledge you have not yet implemented? Who's in that category? Okay, there are secrets about that. So I've got another recording that I want you to see, which is the secrets about how to implement the things that are your goals and your targets. Remember, none of this is my stuff. This is your targets, your goals, the things that matter to you. And most importantly, Julie was talking about personal success routine. When she's talking about getting up early, there's a system for getting yourself to do that without feeling like you're being hit over the head with a club or something. And so when you establish a personal success routine, then, and I'll run a class on that, then what that enables you to do is get your brain in the best possible condition for whatever's going to happen today. Because we know that you'll handle it better if you're more prepared for that. So in summary, what we're saying is there's 21 behavioural change challenge video lessons. Do them live or later in the day. There's 21 assignments to go with that. You're going to learn my behaviour change framework. There's unlimited questions and answers via the Facebook group, private Facebook group we run for that. You're going to get the Conquering Procrastination workbook, the Overcoming Self-Doubt and Building Self-Confidence execution plan, the Implementation Secrets execution plan, a personal success routine live session that I'll do with you, and your custom created personal meditation. And if that ain't worth more than $97, then I'm a monkey's uncle, right? So does it work? Well, this is what people say. In fact, don't try and read that. Go to the middle. Go to the top at the middle. I think his name is David Beverly. Have a read of that. If you can't read it, what he says is, I'm a card-carrying skeptic. And it worked. Now, there's lots of shorter ones, and there's longer ones, and there's probably someone you know on there. The reality is this thing is just a killer from the point of view of your change. If you've got the desire to change, this is a program for you to do. So to sign up for it, basically, you really just got to ask yourself, what is the value? We know it's priceless because you've only got to change one thing. You will have the opportunity to change as many as you want, because once you understand the formula, then it's pretty simple. So there's a couple of caveats with this. There's a couple of things you need to understand. There's a kicker to this, and it boils down to this. What we've known, what we've worked out over the years, is that the more people pay for a program, the more they value that program and the more the program delivers, because they go harder to implement it. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's a ridiculous concept, but it's true. When people come to workshops at our house, when we used to do live workshops in our home, the people who came from Perth got better results than everybody else, because they had to spend a day flying to Sydney and then they had to spend a day flying back. So they spent 2 more days at a 5-day workshop than everybody else did, because they put more into it, plus the airfares and all that sort of stuff. So investment actually matters, right? But we want to make it available, and so that's why we go at this level. But you need to understand that this program needs more than a financial contribution. At $97, it's kind of not a big deal. What the $97 does, it keeps all the chuckleheads out, right? Because all the people who want a quick fix won't pay $97 because they want a tablet. And we haven't got a tablet. We've got 21 days. So if you imagine that it's worth $5,000, which we, that's a realistic price. This sells in the US at $5,000 all the time. So if you imagine that's the case, then you've got to go for it, imagining that you paid the $5,000. Does that make sense? If you're going to do it, do yourself a favor and pretend that it cost you $5,000. That will absolutely guarantee that it's a life-changing experience. So we need to stay the course long enough for our changes to become habit. You would know that. The thing that's not obvious is that once that happens, then the change is permanent, it's powerful, and it's entirely natural, so that the new you becomes a part of your thinking and being and how you actually are in life. So if the next 12 months is to be the best year of your life, then all you've got to do is join this challenge, decide on the one big habit that you want to change, learn my behavior change framework, become your own source of wisdom, change yourself, and change the world. The link's right there. You don't have to type in www. You just put in BIT into your browser or however that works. Or if that's too complex, just click the link in the chat box and we'll take it from there. We start this Saturday, 21st of August. So you'll have to get on your bike, right? Because there's only a few days until we actually launch. So you need to be ready to rock and roll with that. So 21st of August, this Saturday, 7:30 in the morning. The plan is to turn you into a ninja implementer of everything that we've just talked about. So you've got to ask yourself, what would it be worth to master behavior habit change live and in person with me, where you get to ask the questions that are important to you? And if the answer is not more than $97, then I don't know what you're thinking, but you can think what you like. You're entitled to think what you like. I would love to have you with us. A big group of people working together is a magical experience. I've gone way over time. Your job is to get into that program, and we'll talk on Friday. What time on Friday are we getting together?
7:30 a.m. to kickstart the morning.
No.
Oh, on Friday.
No, for the Ask Me Anything session.
Sorry, same time. This time on Friday will be the Ask Me Anything. Yep.
8 p.m. Friday night, Ask Me Anything. So work hard this week, get some difficult questions, and I would be delighted to personally help you with whatever it is that I can help, and we'll spend an hour and a half doing that. Anything from you, Ray? Because I'm done.
No, absolutely. I just want to thank you so much for taking us through that session. Everyone in this room, I know, is working on amazing projects, and this is the reason why I'm so excited about running this 21-day challenge, because it's not just habits that are going to change ourselves, and you beautifully said on the slide, but this is going to change the world. And that's what I get so excited about, is the change makers that are in this room, the caretakers of our planet, who can apply themselves. And I get goosebumps just thinking about it. What this is going to look like in 25, 26 days is going to be so magical. And I'm so excited to see that unfold.
Pretty exciting.
And, so that's really good. I just want to thank you for the reminder of my guilt eating habits. I don't only eat it, I hide the wrapper. So no one finds. And I couldn't agree more with changing your mood and your habits. This is the reason why I've got a standing desk. I stand when I present because it changes my rhythm. I sit when I focus, so all the things you shared was just ticking all the boxes. Everyone in the room, I'm seeing all the thanks coming in. I would love to do what I call a waterfall of value. So just take 2 seconds to think about what's something that you took away from this meeting today, but don't hit the send button just yet. We're going to type it in the text box, and we're going to do a countdown, and then we're going to see a waterfall of value kind of appear, and we're going to copy and paste and send that to everyone in the replay. So we call it, a waterfall of love, a waterfall of knowledge. And so type something that's been a key takeaway through this webinar. Paul went through so many different tips, tricks, facts, frameworks, full of value, and I want to see that in a waterfall. So this is your thinking time. Again, we're kickstarting this challenge on Saturday, the 21st of August. and it's going to neatly finish on a Friday. That's kind of why we started on a Saturday. And Paul, why 7:30 in the morning? Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, a lot of people.
Question.
Well, it provides the most time during the day for people to get a chance to look at it. But there are a lot of people who want to do that first. And there's a lot of value in saying, okay, just get your ass out of bed and get on with it and get into it and make it the first thing in your day. If you can't make it 7:30 in the morning, then you can watch that recording anytime during the day. So therefore, the longer it's up, the easier it is for people to access that material.
Yeah.
But there is something about the early start that, most people appreciate. Can I, with your waterfall of value, can you hold back on Paul swears a lot, right? Can you? That's probably not the best thing. And if I offended you, I apologise. Sometimes I kind of run off a bit.
I love it. It's passion, and there's no filters here in Farming Secrets. So and everyone who's in our community. So okay, let's hope that you've all got that message chat. We're going to finish up on this. So thank you so much, Paul, for coming along. The links are in the link. We will send a replay email. Please, everyone, we're all change makers in this room. Share this far and wide. The more, the merrier. And I can't wait to see the projects that unfold over the next, 30 days. So on that note, thank you very much for hanging out with Farming Secrets and Paul from Global Success Academy. I'm super excited about getting all this done. Let's hit enter on 3, 2, 1. Let's do the value of knowledge waterfall, and you're going to get a copy of all this in your inbox tomorrow. So look out for it, along with the replay and some other fun links. Paul, this is crazy for $97. Thank you so much for this. What a great
pleasure. Great being with you.
Monday night.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you on the flip side. Take care.
Bye.
I'll see you in the inside. Cheers.